Man, what's good, family? Hope everyone is having a blessed Friday night going into the weekend. We are back, another episode of HBCU Fanatics. You know, I am your host, Jared011Green. Of course, I have my co host, Mr. Southern, Mr. Phenomenal, Coach67SportsTV. What's going on, man?
Man, I am blessed and highly favored. I'm glad to be back in the building. You did, you know, the Fanatics we in the building. We back on the block. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to the awesome and amazing LDBC. You did, and shout
Yes,
out to the
sir.
Fanatics, man. We ready to get out the mud, so let's get it. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And, man, we missed last Friday, but we just wanted to bring you guys, our listeners, make sure we get a show in. So we appreciate everyone. If you hit the like button on your way in, share, subscribe. Really appreciate it trying to hit that 500 mark. Appreciate y'all. Um, but you had it on your last show, man. On the tailgate party, you had a very interesting topic about uh the SWAC fan bases, the most loyal, and I wanted to reintroduce it on my show. Because it was an interesting topic. Matter of fact, we was talking, offline. I watched a video on YouTube with two Arkansas Pine. Well, not two. It was like four Arkansas Pine Bluff football players, and they were talking about how they appreciate the SWAC environment, but they feel like the fan base can be a little bit toxic. Can that be true?
I think just like anything, that definitely could be the case. Because on my particular, like you said, the latest edition, episode 23 of the tailgate party, I just was talking about the different fan bases, and I just talking about the SWAC in general, how the SWAC overall as a conference is not as strong as it once was, so on and so forth. And basically, what I said was Jackson State's fan base is the most vocal, right? And
Mm,
basically, a Jackson State fan, because what I do is to just like to promote uh, the live streams that you and I do together, to promote my live streams. I post them in a variety of different Facebook groups. In addition to that, I post it to all of my social media platforms, which is X, Instagram, so on and so forth. So, and not only that, but I'm in the Southern University Instagram group. So I posted, on a variety of different social media platforms. And I just was saying, no matter where you go, like, no matter which Facebook group I'm in, which social media platform I'm on, Jackson State fan base is the most vocal. And essentially, another another Jackson State fan, he took that and he perceived that as, hey, we the best fan base. And I'm like, I didn't say that. I'm like, I just basically said is their fan base is the most vocal. However, his perception of that is, no, we the best. I don't care how you slice it, whatever. Like, of course, the X the Twitter is bleed deep blue, right? And they basically were saying, out the mouth of a Jaguar, JSU is the best fan base in FCS. Go Tigers. And I'm like, no, I never said that. Essentially, what I said is the most vocal. The most vocal does not equate to the best or the most boisterous or whatever. So it's like, nah, essentially what you did was you took what I said and you twisted it to, form this narrative, you know what I'm saying? And I don't have nothing against Jackson State's, fan base, you know, you being
absolutely not. Right.
a loyal member of your fan base, but at the same token, like I never said that. So I don't understand how that's the perception.
Okay. So what do you? So you said they misconstrued that part. And Southern and Christopher Dukes already in the chat. What's up, Christopher Dukes? He said Southern fan base abandoned their team this year.
That's cap because guess what? You got individuals like myself. I went to every single Southern University home game. I went to the Bayou Classic. And the only reason why I didn't go to more games is because, I had some other stuff I was trying to do with the channel, and I invested funds in myself and my platform. So I didn't go to like the game I would ordinarily go in Longmont, Mississippi, uh, this, that, and the third. And guess what? I got a coworker that I'm real close to. Like he went to Daytona and he saw another coworker when Southern played against Bethune. He sat out there in the rain. So guess what? Just like Coach and just like myself, man, I know a bunch of diehard members of Jaguar Nation that went to every single home game the way the other two co-workers I know did. And you got members of Jaguar Nation, I know that like games, you be like, all right, hey, I don't have the funds to go to this game. The two of them, two co-workers, they went to the game in Daytona. So at the end of the day, like that's not true. So for him to say like, hey, yeah, we abandoned our team. No, we didn't. Because just think about it. When Southern had only won one game, I was at the Texas Southern game at AW Memphis Stadium. They still had they sold like what 24,000 tickets for that particular game. So and guess what? It was a way bigger crowd than I thought it would have. So that's not the case. So I mean, we could shape narratives, however we want. All right, I'm gonna give you an example, right? When
Mm-hmm.
Southern plays against Jackson State, like in the 90s, growing up, when Southern played Jackson State in Jackson at the Vet, it's like the most packed game in a regular stadium that I think you could go to. And I'm not even a claustrophobic individual, and it almost feel like you suffocating in that because the crazy thing about it is, I think they say the Vet hold what 50,000 people, or whatever it hold. But at that time, they definitely was overselling the tickets. I don't care nobody say because uh, on our way side, they got a reserve section, which is the bottom. And then at the top is general admission, and general admission is first come, first serve. So we sat on the 50-yard line in '95. That was the only game Southern lost that year. We sat on the 50-yard line at the top of the uh the reserve section at the bottom. But at the top, you literally had people like all the general admission section, all of it was full. And if you had like a decent seat, you couldn't even go to the bathroom, go to the concession area because it's general admission. It's first comes, first serve. So if you sit there and you get up and somebody sit in your seat, it's gone. It's nothing you really could do about it. But all of that was full, and you literally had people sitting on each side of the aisle in terms of the step. Like you walking up to your seat, you got one person sitting on one side of the step, then you got another person sitting on the other side of the step, and then you walk up the middle, right?
What
So
up, fellas?
people were saying, all right, hey, like this Southern Jackson State game in Jackson is a huge deal. And of course, it's definitely packed at AW because AW don't hold as much as the Vet does in Mississippi. So what they try to do is at one point they try to capitalize on it, and they try to make it like a Bayou Classic type deal. Hey, if we could put 60 some thousand, and that's another thing too. When you go to the Vet, they were saying, oh, attendance is 48,000. Maybe because they don't want to get in trouble with the city, or Jackson or whatever, or the fire marshal, or whatever. So it was like, oh, attendance was 48,000. I'm like, man, ain't no way. You might have had 60 to 70,000 people in that game. Because for you to look all across the general admission section at the top, you got two people sitting on steps to walk up the aisle. It's like, come on, man, it's crazy, right? So what they try to do is try to pivot it that and take that momentum and say, all right, well, we're gonna try to create like a mini Bayou Classic, and we're gonna put it in a Superdome for a couple of years when Southern at home. And basically, like it just didn't hit the same. They try to make it what the Bayou Classic is, but it didn't. So what ended up happening was you had a lot of people because there's a certain section of a certain portion of Jaguar Nation, even going back to the 90s. I know individuals to this day that would rather go to Southern away games than go to Southern home games. And then in addition to that, they got people that if Southern playing New Orleans, they're gonna go. I don't care who Southern playing? When Southern played Tulane for the Big Easy Classic those couple of years, hey, those people went to those games. So they tried to tap into that New Orleans market, and
Keep cooking, coach.
and basically it didn't hit the way we thought it would. Like one year they did it, the attendance was like 44,000, and then another year they did it, the attendance was like 45, 46,000. So we thought if it had such a huge, a huge crowd when Southern would play at Jackson, and of course it's already packed at AW because AW doesn't hold as much as the vet. We was under the assumption that, all right, hey, if you take the same game and you put it in New Orleans, it would do the same thing as the Bayou Classic, but it just didn't hit the same. So of course, certain at the time, back then, a couple of Jackson State fans were like, see, hey, if it ain't at the vet, this game ain't as big. And I'm like, no, because Southern brought fans to New Orleans when they played, but maybe more fans for Jackson went when it was at the vet as opposed to coming to New Orleans. Even though we saw a lot of Southern flags flying those two times they played in New Orleans, and we saw a lot of Jackson JSU flags flying too, but it just didn't hit the same as when it was at the vet. So at the end of the day, like you could take narratives and you could push them and you could shape them however you want, but the narratives don't always equate to what's actually the truth, if that makes sense.
And what's up, J6? Appreciate you, brother. Big Reg, what's going on? He said, "What's up, everybody? What's going on, brothers? My fellow content creators there, man. Y'all make sure y'all support them." Christopher Duke said, "Coach 67, stay on topic."
I am on topic. So the topic is the narratives that the JMSU fans trying to push in terms of, hey, we the most vocal fan base, this, that, and the third. The reason why I said that was all I said was their fan base was the most vocal, and the Twitter account basically made it seem like, hey, out of a Jaguar, the Jackson State fan base of the fans. No, I say they're the most vocal. So the point I'm trying to make is you could take narratives and you could push them and shape them however you want. Because at the time, a couple of Jackson State fans say, see, look, hey, Jackson brought more fans from New Orleans and Southern, which wasn't the truth. So the point I'm trying to make is you could take a narrative, you could push it in any direction you want. So yeah, I'm on topic, Christopher Dukes. I might have went an elongated way for getting my point across, but that's basically my point. You could take a narrative and push it and shape it however you want to. So that was the overall point of what I was saying.
Okay, let's do this, man. I know y'all had the misunderstanding uh, on your
Well, I mean,
lecture,
it,
but
it, it was a misunderstanding to them, but to me it wasn't. I just said their fan base was the most vocal. I mean, I'm gonna have a video that's gonna drop tomorrow morning. I'm gonna touch on it more in detail or whatever, in terms of the discrepancy or whatever. But at the end of the day, it just was about narratives. How, I mean, and we just talking about HBCU football,
talk your
but,
shit,
but
Christopher Dukes. He said most
uh,
vocal, passionate, and loyal.
that's cap. To me, that's
Oh,
cap. To me, that's cap. But at the end of the day, because I mean, guess what? A lot of other fan base in the sweat, because basically they was like, hey, most vocal means the best. No, if you ask other fan bases around the SWAC, when they say most vocal, they deem it to be most annoying, most aggravating. So
shots
most vocal,
fired.
most vocal could be pushed in a variety of different directions. So I mean, you got to be careful when you say, "Hey, just because we the most this, that means we the best." No, that don't equate the best. Because guess what? Hey, I done had some chicks that I talked to, and guess what? They was the most vocal. That didn't mean they made the best chicks. That meant they were the most annoying and most aggravating. So you could take that narrative and shape it however you want.
So let me ask you this: minus your Jaguars, what other SWAC team do you feel, uh, in your opinion, honest opinion, uh, probably has the most loyal fan base?
I'm not gonna lie. That's a loaded question, and it might seem like I'm trying to placate to everybody, but it's no real like it's no real how am I phrase this? To me, I think it kind of depends on the time frame. Because at one point, I'm not gonna lie, right now, like Jackson, you could say Jackson State, but there was a point, especially like around 2019, when I was working in my school, and it was a lot of Alcorn State fans, Alcorn State alumni working at the school I was at. Because I'm not gonna lie, like working at that particular school at Capital Middle at that time in 2019, it was like SWAC Central. You know, you got Southern, of course, is in Baton Rouge. Southern had the biggest alumni, base at the school. Then you had Grambling. Then you had Alcorn. Uh, you had Jackson State. So it was like SWAC Central. But the crazy thing about it is, then you had other individuals, like one of the dean of students. He had went to both Southern and Alcorn State. But at that time, it was Alcorn State by far. It, the reason being is because I came into contact with more Alcorn State fans than anything. And then you got to realize Jackson State was down. So those Jackson State fans are so vocal now. They wasn't as vocal back then. And in addition to that, Alcorn State was the team to beat in the SWAC. And, every school I pretty much done worked at, I would wear a Southern sweatshirt, Southern jacket, or something with Southern on it every day. In fact, at one of the predominantly white schools I worked at early in my career, they would have LSU Day. And I guess they took offense to the fact that I would come to school with a Southern shirt on. So they saw me with a gold shirt. Somebody was like, "Oh, Coach got on a LSU shirt." Yeah, LSU. I said, "No, it's not an LSU shirt. It's a Southern shirt." They was like, "But it's LSU Day." But I'm like, I didn't go to LSU. I went to Southern. So why are you trying to force feed me? I don't have nothing against LSU. Like when LSU play against a non-SWAC school, I want LSU to win. But you can't make me wear something for LSU. So that created a little bit of a rift at that particular school because they felt like I didn't go along to get along enough. But sticking the topic, in 2019 when Alcorn was on top, and when Alcorn was on top and I was interacting with all of these people that went to Alcorn, and not only that, I talked about this on my channel also. There's a pipeline from Natchez to Baton Rouge that people really don't realize. So you got a lot of people, because I talked to, I can't remember the guy name. He one of the season ticket holders that sit like on the opposite end of the one of the rows that I sit on, and he was like, "But last year our seats were closer, but this year we were a little further apart." And basically what he was saying is, he was like, "Coach, the thing you don't realize," he said, when you live in Natchez or whatever, like you got a lot of people. Because one year Alcorn played against Southern, and literally the two rows behind it, all of those people were Alcorn State fans, and all of them were from Natchez. And it was like basically the reason why so many people from Natchez moved to Baton Rouge. He said is because it's far enough away from Natchez to be away, to be out of town, but it's close enough that if there's an emergency or something happens at home, a family member gets sick, a family member passes or whatever, it's only 90 minutes away. So you close enough to make that hop, skip, and a jump back home, but it's far away from Natchez to be out of town, if that makes sense. But I would say at that time it was definitely Alcorn. Definitely at a certain point in the 80s, it definitely was Grambling because Grambling was the team. So I think it kind of depends on like who on top. I think the reason why we really I can't say PV as much, even though PV won the SWAC championship. Like PV is more of I view him more as a basketball school than a football school. And that's why you got like maybe a handful of Jackson State fans that was jabbing PV, basically saying it's not a rivalry because y'all don't have a big enough fan base for football to really make it a rivalry. And not only that, but we don't play y'all every year. Of course, a couple of them glossed through the fact that Prairie View actually went to the vet, beat them in the SWAC championship game, but that's another story. So it might seem like, I'm trying to placate every fan base, but at the end of the day, I think it kind of depends on the time frame. So when I say 2019, it was Alcorn, because at the time, JSU was down and Alcorn was up, and those Alcorn fans, they were just like the Jackson State fans are now. They were vocal, and they would let you know, hey, we gonna scalp y'all when y'all come to the reservation. Woo woo woo. Another point, even though I'm from South Louisiana, I know so many people that went to Grambling. In fact, I went to Assumption. Brandon Before Brandon Jacobs, the feature back at Assumption after I left, it was Brad Hill. And just like Brad here, I know so many people that's from our area that ended up going to Grambling. In fact, I had a couple teammates at Assumption that ended up going to Grambling. So at the end of the day, I think it kind of depends on the time frame you're talking about, and it depends on where you're located and who's in proximity to you. Uh, you know, social media is bigger now than it was then, but you know, of course, like I said, JSU fans all over social media, but at that time, I just came into contact with so many more Alcorn State fans. So in 2019, it was Alcorn State, maybe. In the 80s, it was Grambling. So at the end of the day, I think it depends on the time frame and who's on top of the
In
SWAC.
the 2016-17, it was that 2 year. It was Grambling definitely as well. They
Yeah,
had
yeah,
a
yeah.
re-emergence with Devontae Kincaid
And
being at
Martez
quarterback
Carter.
and Martez Carter.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes, sir. So, yeah, right now, and Christopher Duke talks will stay on topic again because he want to hear about Jackson State. But um, Jackson State right now has seems like has the most loyal fan base. I'm not gonna lie, but only because of the success you guys had for a couple of years.
Well,
Um, but like Coach said, it Fairview A&M could take it if they go continue to be hot.
well,
Uh,
and see the thing, like some of the JSU fans were saying about Prairie View, like they're more of a basketball school, but not only that, but their fan base really isn't. It's nowhere near as vocal as as vocal as Jackson State fans. So they really don't get the, talking trash and get the banter back and forth. They're not gonna rile up somebody like an Adrian Crook because they don't talk enough to do that. But even since they won the SWAC championship, like a couple of them have been sticking their chests out a little bit because uh, a few weeks ago I posted one of my links and basically saying that, hey, Southern getting some nice recruits in their recruiting class. I always post the links for my YouTube live streams and the different Facebook groups. And what the PV fans were like, we do not care. And I kind of raised bait him a little bit. I didn't say nothing crazy, and then I just was like, basically, you must be a Grambling fan. And he was like, in my avatar, you clearly see that I got a PV hat on through, and I'm like, hey, I care less. It don't bother me one bit or the other. So it is what it is. So at the end of the day, Prairie View fans starting to be a little bit more vocal, but I don't think they fan base collectively as a whole. That's why in our little Southern Baller Show group chat, Jay Good and I, we was talking about how basically a lot of GSU fans was taking shots at PV fans after the Celebration Bowl because basically PV blew the game. And
they did.
I'm like, well, why all these JSU fans was taking a shot at PV fans? They was like, man, they was talking so much trash after they went to the vet and beat them in the SWAC championship game. So they was like, basically, they fired the first shot, and we just returning fire because they blew the game. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, oh, all right. And then after that, I start to see that, not a bunch of them, but a few PV fans started to become a little bit more vocal. So at the end of the day, I think it kind of just depends on the time frame. I don't see it being PV fans because, like I said, to me they seem like they're more basketball than football, though.
Yeah, but you never know. But yeah, Jackson State been looking strong for a couple of years, but and I ain't talking about the alumni. Yeah, y'all you graduated from the school. Of course, I'm talking about overall just consistency, supporting the school, especially football fans. I've been watching SWAC for a long time, SWAC football a long time, and I can see what you're talking about. It goes up and down depending
Yeah,
on
it's definitely
how
a
hot the
wave.
school is. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yes, sir, yes, sir. But okay, okay. But let's talk about the portal, man. What's going on in the portal? Because what day did the portal close? It closed like a couple of days ago.
No, it closed last Friday, but when the
Last
portal
Friday,
closed,
yeah.
basically all that meant is you can't jump in the portal after that day. But National Signing Day is February the 4th, which I think is what I think next Thursday, I think. So, you still got a little time to get your, because today is what, January the 23rd. So you still
Mm-hmm.
got a little time to if you got some holes in your roster, uh, you still got time to really like fill some of the holes. Some people have been talking about what Tremaine Jackson and PV been doing. Uh at one point, Jackson State was the topic from the standpoint of, they had 25 players that were in the transfer portal. A couple of them came back, but they done brought in a lot of players, so they're making a lot of traction lately. Grambling been making some moves. They got a big time running back uh, from a Power Five. Of course, Southern making moves. So I think it kind of depends on which team you locked in on. And one thing you and I and my cousin Ray Swain 225, he was a panel member on the Bayou Sports Talk at one point. Basically, you know, he and I, we kind of always been individuals that really don't kind of feed too much into the preseason when it comes to the NFL. Whereas somebody like yourself, you be itching for football action. So any little bit of football you could get, you, JB, y'all ready for it, you know what I'm saying? Whereas us,
Right.
we really don't kind of buy into it too much. So that's how I'm starting to feel about like spring training and even just the off season in general, because for the most part, just one of the things and that we talked about in Roughing the Swag with Avis Heat. Of course, he a JSU guy, and basically, we was he was saying he don't follow my channel no more because if I pick Southern to beat, if I pick Southern to beat Jackson State, and then I turn around and pick Bethune-Cookman to beat Southern, then I don't have no credibility. And I'm like, dude, first of all, I've been following the SWAC and Southern for over 40 years at this point, first. And then second of all, I'm right way more often than I'm wrong. And I'm man enough to admit, hey, I was wrong about this, I was wrong about that. And I said the reason why after the Jackson State game, I didn't pick Southern no more after that. Because basically, that night we came to the realization that, yeah, Southern wasn't as good as we thought they would be in the off season. And that's one thing I kind of been, you know, like the people I talked to behind the scenes, I was saying, like, I'm basically gonna wait till the fall rolls around and see what the team really start doing on the field. Because a lot of times when we get caught up in recruiting and hey, this team got this recruiting class and this team got that recruiting class, like I think it's harder to pinpoint the SWAC. Really, it's harder to pinpoint even with the PWIs, especially with the NIL and the transfer portal. Like the 5-star players don't hit as much as they used to, even though really they wasn't hitting, as often as people might think back in the gap. That's why you got a team like Indiana that won this year because they would rather, you know, reach down a lower level and get James Madison type players and have a real tight team in terms of chemistry and continuity. Whereas just, buying a bunch of 4 and 5-star players, you know what I'm saying? We talk about that all the time on the Southern
Mm-hmm.
Baller Show. So at the end of the day, like each fan base is kind of excited about the players they're bringing in, from PWIs, from bigger FCS schools, from Power 5
And
schools,
don't sleep
Power
on no
4
Division
schools.
two recruits neither.
Yeah, well, I mean, you and I and Joe Town and Brent Fox and JB, we talked about it on the Southern Baller Show. You got to realize Trinidad Chambers won a Division II national championship last year, and he literally almost led Ole Miss to the national championship game this year. So I'm not sleeping on Division II either, and even in the SWAC, a lot of those players the last couple of years from South Carolina State, from PV, and probably this coming year from FAMU, they're coming up from Division II. So I'm not sleeping on Division II. I'm just pointing out the fact that, the old way of doing things in terms of this new era with the transfer portal and NIL money and NIL collectives and that type of thing, you can't just go out and do like, we're just going to say Alabama, right? Nick
Mm-hmm.
Saban, part of the reason why he retired is because the NIL, it changed the way things are done in college football. And he didn't have that same dominance where he was able to stockpile all these 5-star players. Like, just think about all the running backs that came through Alabama in the Nick Saban era. whether we talk about Derrick Henry, uh, who else? Mark Ingram. I mean, we could just go on and on and on. At one point, you would be playing for Nick Saban, and he would have a junior that's a 5-star player, and he might have a freshman or a sophomore that's a 5-star player that's backing that guy up. And essentially, he got to wait his turn. But with the NIL in the transfer portal, because you got to realize, I always talk about the kind of success Pete Richardson had back in the Gap, in that era of Southern and those early mid to late 90s and the early 2000s. A lot of people feel like he didn't have the same kind of success that he once had once Nick Saban stopped LSU players from transferring to Southern. So you got to realize back in those days, you had to transfer to be eligible to play right away. You had to transfer down to a lower level. So the point I'm trying to make is, different eras breed different success. Because we was even talking about Fred McNair. We were saying even if Fred McNair got a head coaching job at a Division II HBCU or even another SWAC school, would he have the same kind of success that he had in 2019 at Alcorn State? Like, it's a different era. So sometimes coaches have trouble adapting to that particular era, and Nick Saban clearly had trouble adapting. So that's why, you see him on College Game Day on set, because he don't have the same kind of success that he had back in that day. And some coaches could adapt. I mean, it's crazy how in 2026 you would rather uh, a coach like Coach Signetti over having a coach like a Nick Saban. So that's how the game has changed. And I think, we're going to see the ripple effect in the SWAC. But the point I'm trying to make is, I'm not really getting wrapped up and caught up in the off season. I mean, don't get me wrong. I talk about, hey, this player going to this team, like you say, for example, if you Jackson State,
Mm-hmm.
hey, you lost a player like a Travis Terrell Jr. or Mark Miller, but they brought in this player and they brought in that player. All right. Even if you Southern, yeah, hey, guess what? Somebody like I don't know, Kelby Givens, he graduated. Darren Morris, he left in the portal, he went to Boise State. Jalen Woods, he left and he went to Hampton. But guess what? They brought in this player from this school. They brought in that player from that school. They brought in the Crosby kid from Texas A&M. So, we talking about all of the players that these different schools are bringing in. But at the end of the day, until you see them in pads, until you see them on the field, and until they start winning games, you really don't know what team's really going to pan out to be. Because, we talk about all the time how at one point the Philadelphia Eagles had Vince Young. And he was like, man, we're a dream team with Namdi and this, that, and the third. And they didn't pan out to be what we thought they were going to be. So a lot of times you thinking, hey, a team going to be this and a team going to be that. They might have a lot of good players, but can those players gel? Do they have chemistry? Do they have continuity? These things matter in team sports.
Yeah, it does, man. Yeah, it does. And like you said, it's interesting to see coaches who are used to the old ways of picking up recruits have to adjust to these new transfer portal rules and everything.
Yeah, because,
Um,
I don't mean to cut you off, but we talk about
no,
Nick
go ahead.
Saban. What old boy for Clemson, the one that beat Nick Saban in the national championship game that year?
Dabo Swinney.
Dabo Swinney, he couldn't adapt either. So a lot of coaches, they have trouble adapting in this modern day, in this modern era.
Yeah, man. Yeah, they do. They do. Because these kids getting paid, so it's no longer these young boys suffering in their dorm room eating Vienna sausages and grits and ramen. They trying
Yeah,
to get paid.
they're trying to get paid. In fact, we talked about that with Zion Chris, Jay Good and I behind the scenes. And he was like basically saying, like, you know, just say you're a player right now and you can come at a SWAC and you get $50,000 and you could start at a SWAC Blue Blood at a FAMU, a Southern, a Grambling, a Jackson State, or wherever, or a Power 4 PWI offers you 100,000, 200, 300. thousand just to be a backup. You gonna sneeze at that money or you gonna take it? And in many instances, especially when they see like a good HBCU, a Grambling, uh, FAMU, Southern, or Jackson State, when they see these teams interested in these guys, hey, that's why they pretty much poach these players. And it's to the point now, I noticed like Southern and Grambling, they've been moving different from the standpoint of, hey, if they got players they're really interested in, they really try to keep these players under wraps. Because in many instances, once the bigger schools see that, hey, SWAC school's interested in this player, basically they playing big bank, take little bank. Like, hey, yeah, all right, y'all got 50 racks to throw at this player. Hey, this player probably rather come out of school and take this $250,000 we got to be a backup as opposed to being a starter. So, hey, we see that these handful of SWAC schools interested in, we're going to swoop in and we're going to steal them at the last minute. And in many instances, a lot of these young players, they know how to play the social media game also from the standpoint of they posting all their offers to drive their market value up. And I can't knock a kid like Zion Chris that had interest from Southern, that had interest from other teams. He posted his offer, and individuals like myself, I fell for the bait and I ran from him like, oh yeah, hey, bunch of other social media platforms and bigger, bigger platforms are basically saying that, hey, Zion Chris is coming to Southern, and then hey, Tulane ended up swooping in because he never said, hey, I committed to Southern. He just posted his offer, and guess what? Tulane ended up swooping in. I mean, I wish him well, but from what I'm understanding, he probably not even gonna start. But I'm sure he'd rather be a backup and get paid like maybe 300 racks to be a backup at Tulane than whatever he was gonna get to be the starter at Southern. So at the end of the day, I think it depends on your preference. You know what I'm saying? And I talked about it in one of my live streams when I talked about tradition and legacy and all of that. But all that stuff matters still. But the NIL and the bag that you can offer a player, it matters more to most of these young kids nowadays. They'd rather get 300 racks and be a backup at the end of the bench or be on the scout team or play special team as opposed to getting 50 racks and being the SWAC player of the year, whatever the case may be. So at the end of the day, you pretty much got to weigh your options. And you can't, what the running back from Delaware State, they say he got a kid to feed. What the running back name?
Gillis.
Yeah, I mean, so you can't knock a kid like that. Hey, if he got a 5-year-old kid that he got to feed, I can't knock him for doing what's in his best interest. But my thing is, I hope some of these kids, they have financial literacy, so they can actually do something with these 3, 4, 500, $600,000 they're getting, or even a meal, a few meal, whatever. Hopefully, they're not just taking their money and they're blowing it, because even if you look at some of these guys that's in college football right now, they probably, some of these guys that get millions, they might even make it to the NFL. So hopefully they are financially literate and they make sound financial choices and decisions with their money as opposed to just blowing it and throwing it away.
Yeah, Lord, I hope so. I really do. David Scott, what's up, man? I haven't seen you in a while, man.
Man, salute to
Appreciate you
David
coming
Scott,
by.
third man.
What's up,
Salute to
bro?
you,
And
man.
my sister Chris came by. Thank you. She said, "Hey, y'all, what's going on?"
Man, salute,
Ain't
salute.
ain't A&M Bulldog fan there, Miss Chris. Uh, Jada 6 said just like how some thought this Raven secondary was going to be the next thing because Jair Alexander, Woolsey, Kyle, Hamilton, and Starks will be could be the next, but nah, total letdown. Yep, got all those players. It's similar to the NFL. Got all those players, all them names you thought, but the scheme was trash and ain't gonna work.
Yeah, I mean, and we talk about that all the time on the Southern Baller Show. When you got a system, you got to bring players in to fit your system, and that's on all levels in the NFL, especially in college with this transfer portal NIL era. You have to get players to fit your scheme and fit your system, and those players have to come together. They have to have chemistry and continuity in the whole nine.
JD6 said, "My man Triple OG in the SWAC. Yes, he is. Yes, Coach is. He be long with it, but I'll be letting him go because he know what he talking about for the most part. Um, Jeffrey Carroll said, "What's up, Jeffrey Carroll? Welcome, brother." He said JSU was losing and still was winning the FCS attendance record.
Oh no, but see, and Jeffrey Carey and I, we had this conversation one day on one of my live streams, and
Hmm.
basically I was saying in the late '90s, people don't realize Southern and Jackson State was like number one and number two in FCS attendance, and then of course I think it was Jeffrey Carroll and a couple other JSU fans, you know, even in fact even at the not this year when they played, but year before last, another Jackson State fan argued me down. He was like, "No, in the late '90s, early 2000s, Jackson State had the FCS attendance record every single year." I'm like, "No, man." I'm like, Southern had it one year, Jackson State, and they alternated for like a handful of years or whatever. After a certain point, yeah, Jackson State ended up taking it over. The reason being is because I think some kind of way they stopped counting the Bayou Classic or whatever. I don't know. That was the reason why Jackson State took it over at one point. But I'm like, yeah, if you look at like the late '90s, and you look at the FCS attendance record, I think starting in like '97, like Jackson State had it, and then no Southern had it, Jackson State had it. So even a year they played in the SWAC championship game in '99, they were like the number one and number two teams in FCS attendance or whatever. And that's why when people used to ask, why uh, Southern don't play in the one AA playoffs, or why SWAC schools don't play in the one AA playoffs, I'm like, man, you would be stupid. You would be losing money. If you, especially back then, you'd have been losing money, especially if you Southern or Grambling. But any SWAC school or any MEAC school at this point, you would lose big time money to go to FCS playoffs because just think about it. If you in the SWAC, especially if you Southern or Grambling, the FCS playoffs start the same weekend as the Bayou Classic. That's a bag right there for both schools, for the state of Louisiana. Still, Louisiana is not gonna let Southern and Grambling throw that kind of money away. That's first of all. Then whichever school hosts the SWAC championship game, you get that pot, and then you go to the Celebration Bowl and you're gonna get that bag. And the thing about it is, essentially the Heritage Bowl and the Celebration Bowl is the same game, just in different eras. But the thing about it is a lot more money attached to the Celebration Bowl now than it was when it was the Heritage Bowl back in the '90s. So that's the reason why it's so much more financial incentive. Because back in the day, you still had teams like Jackson State or like Howard or Hampton or whoever that will opt to go to the one AA playoffs as opposed to playing in the Heritage Bowl because when the first place team, Southern or Grambling, playing the SWAC playing against the third place team in the MEAC, you know, that's why Pete Richardson really lost interest in it because he was like, we in a no-win situation. And we beat them, we supposed to beat them. But if we lose, we got upset by them. And then one or two schools that went to the one AA playoffs, like they're gonna win the Black National Championship. So he was like, we have nothing to gain. But in this era, like you got a lot more to gain because it's a lot more financial incentive. So at the end of the day, uh, you know, Jeffrey Carroll is right. Like, Jackson State, Southern, they were definitely, especially in the late '90s, they were like the top two teams in FCS attendance. And like I said, that number went down for Southern over the years from the perspective of they don't count that Bayou Classic game into the fold. And then you got to realize a lot of these HBCUs, if you playing like any type of classic, like the Circuit City Classic, the SWAC MEAC Challenge, Bayou Classic, State Fair Classic, whatever you playing in, like
Hmm.
those are big events, and it is a big, thing that brings a big crowd. Whereas even though if you somehow like a Montana State and you really operating on like a FBS level in terms of funding and the whole nine, they still not bringing them. Whenever you get a chance next season, look at the FCS playoff games and look at the kind of crowds you're seeing there. You got a little crowd, but there ain't nothing like a Bayou Classic, like a Boombox Classic. It ain't that type of crowd. I don't care what nobody see, and I'll be willing to bet dollars to donuts on that. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, okay. And Christopher Duke said, who is Southern's quarterback?"
Telling me we'll find out on February the 4th.
Yeah, that's when signing day.
Yeah.
And I ain't gonna lie, one player that I'm eager to see where he lands is former Mississippi Valley's tight end, who was freshman All-American, Jackson Davis. He hit the portal late, April in April 2025. Hasn't signed from to my knowledge, and if I'm wrong, please let me know, y'all. But from what I'm seeing with my research, he haven't picked a team yet. He's still in the portal. But he could definitely, if he stays in the HBCU ranks or in the SWAC or MEAC, whatever, he definitely will be a rebolster that tight end room.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, right now you at a point where you really, you looking to fill the holes that you may have, and then in the summer you're gonna look to fill even more holes. I know people definitely been talking about Andrew Body. Like Andrew Body is,
He another
uh,
one. I'm trying to see where he fall.
no, yeah, we definitely gonna see, in the next week and a half or so, like where he gonna fall. Uh, that's what people are waited. They are waiting with bated breath because, like I said, the date is the 23rd, week after next, which is on Wednesday. We looking to see where he go. From what I'm hearing, maybe he's not getting the kind of, we don't know for certain, but maybe he's not getting the kind of offers that he thought he would get. Some people was estimating from a value standpoint, it was like, hey, he might be worth somewhere between like 1.5 to 2 mil. The reason they were saying that because if you look at people like a lot of these players that jump up, you know, Trinidad Chambers might be one, DJ Lagway or whatever. Especially if you're a guy like a Carson Beck. Even just imagine if somebody like a Stetson Bennett was playing in college football right now. We saw the same thing with Cam Ward. When you got these veteran guys with experience, that got championship experience, that played, you know, numerous times deep into the college football playoffs, those guys have a lot of value, and these guys get bags. So I would assume, especially after somebody like Trinidad Chambers did, I was assuming somebody like Andrew Body, he was gonna get like a meal, at least a meal five, 2 mil, whatever. But he hasn't posted anything yet. Hopefully everything works out for him. But from what I'm hearing, if nothing comes his way, he gonna go back to Alabama State. And I'm not gonna lie, they another SWAC school that had some players at the portal. I mean, it would be huge if he would go back for them. It would be huge for them if he went back to Alabama State.
Yeah, it'd definitely be huge for the Hornets if they get the
No,
star quarterback back.
no, don't get it twisted. As a Southern fan, I would be mad at him if he came, on the bluff. You know what I'm saying? I'm just,
Oh, I
I'm just,
bet. I bet.
I'm just throwing it out there because, Jay Good. Now we was just kind of talking about that behind the scene, but Jay Good was saying, from what he was seeing, he was like, if he don't get the kind of offer, I guess he want, you know, it's potential that he could potentially go back to Alabama State. And I'm not gonna lie, I think for Eddie Robinson, I think it'll be a good look if you could get him back. Uh, because people was like, oh, Carl Ligon, he not is is big a deal or whatever. But I'm like, yeah, but if you get Body, you might be you get you some running backs because if you have an elite level quarterback, you can get the running back. And then not only that, but South Carolina State quarterback, Billy Atkins, he was in the portal too. So if somebody like Southern, if they didn't land somebody like Andrew Body, like Billy Atkins would be a heck of a backup playing in terms of an option B. I think he could be a somebody that could be in the running for, SWAC Offensive Player of the Year or even MEAC Offensive Player of the Year preseason. So, those two guys are guys. If you're a team around the SWAC, hey, I'll be chomping at the bit to get either one of those two. You know what I'm saying?
All right, let me get some of these comments. Adrian Good said, "What's good?" The Southern Defender is in here. He
Already
said,
salute the cook.
and he said, Dukes, who is the quarterback? Duke, who is the quarterback? Stupid. Now, I will say this: Jared Lockhart gonna be that dude, man. I even he impressed me with his freshman debut.
I'm glad you pointed that out before you finish your comments. You know, somebody was posting that on X or Twitter also. They was like, man, Jared Lockhart, this, that, and the third. But this is the thing that got me. When you start talking about like historically great SWAC quarterbacks, that's when you kind of lose me. You know, basically it was like, hey, they think he gonna be better than Robert Superman Kent. I'm like, oh my goodness,
Oh,
bro.
I ain't
If
going
you
that far.
if you a JSU fan, I'm not saying Jared Lockhart don't have potential to be like a great quarterback in the SWAC. I'm not saying that. I think he has a lot of potential. He showed it this year. But do not mention Robert Superman Kent and Jared Lockhart's name in the same sentence. Please don't do that. Like, why y'all gonna put that kind of pressure on this young man, bro? Man, hey, bro, let Robert Superman Kent be, bro. Superman Kent was a dog. Like, leave this boy alone, bro. Hey, that's like me saying, guess what? The next Southern University quarterback gonna be better than Brian Lee and Quincy Richard and Eric Randall and Austin Howard and Trey Joseph. Man, why would I put that kind of pressure on Southern next quarterback? Man, come on, man.
Right. Okay. Okay. Um, J6 says, speaking of Lagway, y'all think he is going to bring relevancy back to Baylor? Now I will say this: he back home, so lot of, especially back in when he played ball in high school, Texas, he was a beast out of Willis High School. Um, Bringing him every year when he was there deep into the Texas high school playoffs. So um, I think he will.
Well, I mean, to me, I think because I don't know if you saw the game when they played against LSU, but I can't think of who Southern played, but I watched Southern game first, and then I watched LSU game. Maybe I was watching them at the same time, some kind of way. But they were saying the issue with Lagway was when he went to University of Florida or whatever. Basically, I think he got hurt and he couldn't participate in spring practice or whatever. And they
Hmm.
said not only that, but he had another like nagging injury that lingered into summer camp when when your school first started. So he kind of started behind the eight ball, and he struggled early in the season, and it just kind of was like a ripple effect the rest of the way. They were
Yeah,
saying
he
they
was
really not.
trying to force balls down the field, get interceptions back to be. It
Yeah,
wasn't a
and
good
I
look.
mean, if you done been that guy, your whole life or whatever, and you feel like you letting your team down, and you know, kind of like for those individuals that watch the program, you know, you got to pitch a shutout every week to win, and the defense got to carry you. You don't want to feel like you let your team out. So it used to get to the point where he was forcing stuff. You know what I'm saying? But the thing that got me on X2, this was on X2. Somebody, one of these HBCU fans was saying like, yeah, Lagway coming to the SWAC. I'm like, bro, do not post that nowhere else, bro. Like, what are we doing,
No,
man?
that-
If this dude was touching 3.5 million at the University of Florida, and there's no way this dude coming to the SWAC, man. SWAC ain't got that kind of bag. No SWAC school
mm,
got that kind of bag to get him. So I kind of figured he was going to end up running another a Power Four PWI, and he ended up landing back in the state of Texas. And that's another thing too. Even when you look at the NFL or you look at college football, when you got a guy that was like highly touted, highly recruited, or whatever, the next coach think he could fix him. So that was the reason why I knew another school was going to throw it back his way. You even see it in the NFL. Like if you get a guy that's like a number one pick, and he end up being a bust for this school, for this team, then he go to the next team, the next head coach, then he could fix him. I kind of figured he was going to do the same thing with Lagway. So I knew him coming into SWAC or even uh, another FCS school. I knew that wasn't a realistic possibility.
okay. I think Bro George is listening to. He kind of going back and listening to us from the beginning. 'Cause he says based on home attendance when we were talking about the most loyal and SWAC fan base. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't think you base it. I mean, I think that's a huge determining factor, but I don't think that's the sole determining factor. But
No, it's not, but it's most of it.
all right, so what about when you team down? I mean, because guess what? Before Deion Sanders came to Jackson State, I mean, Jackson State fan base wasn't as vocal as it is now. So were
That's
they that
true.
loyal? You did. I mean, don't get me
I'm
wrong.
I'm just saying. I'm just
Their
saying
attendance
this.
did. Their attendance didn't fall completely off the map, but hey, it wasn't strong like it is now. I know that much. So I mean, hey, like Crook said all the time, he was like, hey, at one point, Southern had more wins at the vet than Jackson State did.
And
So hey, it is.
speaking of Adrian Cook, he said the JUCO quarterback looked better than me. Okay, regarding talking about Jared Lockhart. Okay, we will see. And then David Scott said, do you guys think George Seaton should have stayed at Colorado? That's a good question, and I'm glad you asked that, David Scott, because um a lot of Colorado fans are mad at Jordan Seaton because uh basically he made it like he said he was not gonna go anywhere, and soon as soon as that money was calling him, he jumped in the portal. Now I do want the young man to go chase that bag. Uh but just be careful what you promise, be careful what you say. But I'm gonna tell you what I appreciate what he did for his family. He knew he was leaving Colorado. He knew he was leaving Colorado, and he told his cousin Javon McFadden to take his place. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, well, I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna be honest with you. Like you said, the bag, and then Jay Good pointed this out all the time. With this with this NIL era, it's so much recklessness and lawlessness in terms of the way it's being governed. And we just gonna use JSU for example. If Christopher Duke's in the chat, he might know who I'm talking. But they're the JSU player that basically was saying like a couple of days before the portal closed, he was gonna stay at JSU or whatever. And then he hopped in a portal with a do not contact distinction. And I'm like, for you to hop into the portal with a do not contact distinction, it kind of sounds like he already has a deal in
And you
place.
know who he signed with right today, right?
Who he signed with?
LSU.
See, that's what I'm saying. But that's what bro. You cannot tell me these bigger PWI, especially these Power Four schools, are not contacting these players in the SWAC and be like, look, hey, we're gonna come here with. Hey, bro, I'm not gonna lie, bro. Hey, that sounded so shady, bro. I'm telling you, man. Hey, these PWIs, bro, they wild out here. You know what I'm saying?
It's cold as crap up there. He said, and Adrian Cook said he don't know about that. What you referring to, Adrian Cook? David Scott said, I think in the NIL is about to get changed next year. It might, brother.
Well, last week, when I did my live stream, Perry White of the Jaguar Journal, he talked about that too. He interviewed Tony Clayton, president for Southern University board, and basically he was saying that at some point they're gonna cap NIL money, and because basically it's too much going on. I mean, Jay Good had already said that before. Tony Clayton said he was like, "Man, coach," he was like, "I'm telling you, they're gonna put a cap on NIL." He told me this behind the scenes, and I kid you not, the next week when Tony Clayton was on the Jaguar Journal with Perry White, he said that. But Tony Clayton don't think it should be a cap. He was like, he think these young men should be able to maximize the dollars they could get. But Jay Good was saying that from a business standpoint, we're just gonna say somebody like a DJ Lagway, like Florida dumped like what 3.5 million into him, and he didn't play well, and they felt like they really didn't get a return on their investment. If you look at the University of Texas with Arch Manning, what they dumped 6.2 million into him, they really didn't feel like they got a return on their investment. So you got a lot of these guys that's getting the bag. Even if you look at like Cam Ward last year, well, Cam Ward was undefeated. We thought he was gonna be the front runner and win the Heisman Trophy, and then at the end of the season, like mine just fell off. So at the end of the day, like many of these teams, they're dumping the bag into these players. They really don't feel like they're getting a return on their investment. And in addition to that, in some instances, it's just a bidding war. We talked about the kid from Michigan. What his name is Underwood, the quarterback.
Yeah.
He was supposed to go to LSU. LSU had promised him $7 million, and then since he's from the state of Michigan, University of Michigan, they jump back in and they give him $10 million. So he decommit to LSU and he ended up going to Michigan. So at the end of the day, it's like, bro, I mean, don't get me wrong. We know just like the NFL, the the elite level quarterbacks, the elite level pass rushers, and the elite level left tackles to protect the quarterbacks, those are going to be like the highest price positions. But at some point, like this NIL, like, they're going to cap it because the government, anytime you got, these young men making this kind of money to play college football, man, they're going to put a cap on that. They might cap it
Yeah.
at like 3 point something million, 4 million or whatever. That's going to be the max you could get. Watch.
I believe, like you said, because a lot of the money they dipping onto these players, and they're not they're not doing what as expected. Yeah, they definitely gonna put a cap on it in the future. Okay, you talking about Dukes? Okay, all right, y'all two going back and forth.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, but especially Arch Manning. Man, to me, I think he the biggest example of, man, you giving this boy $6.2 million. I mean, he making more than some NFL quarterbacks. And this boy did not produce you a national championship. If anything, I feel like the only thing he really had going for him was his last name at certain points in the season.
yeah, man, and David Scott said, yeah, it was out of control when I saw the quarterback from Washington do what he did. Yeah, and then and to answer your question, because I feel like I didn't answer your question, I just gave you some back information. Uh, I don't think he should have left, but I want to see these young boys get paid over the years of these athletes in the '90s and the '80s, '90s, and the 2000s. You know, um, dying broke and their bodies all broke up. So a lot of these athletes deserve this money, man. And
Even if you look at like the Fab Five, like Jalen Rose, like when he was a struggling broke college student, you know what I'm saying? Or the O'Bannon brothers with that's where the initial NIL lawsuit came from, where they used the likeness of the O'Bannon brothers on the NCAA basketball game. So that's where all of this came from. I mean, don't get me wrong. I wanted to see the college players get paid, but I didn't want it to be the Wild Wild West the way it is right now. I mean, you need a lot more governance in terms of rules, guidelines in place. Not all of these shady backdoor dealings and that type of thing.
yeah, you're right, man. And but I one thing I do appreciate about what Jordan Seaton did, he left a spot for his cousin, so his cousin could get the bag at Colorado, do his thing at Colorado. So I thought that was cool. A lot of people talking shit, but I saw what he did with that. Um, J Bar said, "Salute to the family in chat listening. I appreciate you supporting." And Jada6 said, "Y'all know how much Oregon is giving Rayola and more." Shit, that's an interesting situation, because I believe if Oregon would have made it to the championship game and won it, Moore would have probably ended up. Ain't no doubt in my mind he would have went into the draft. But because of what happened, I think he want one more year. Uh, because he felt like I guess his draft stock dropped.
Yeah,
But
he didn't look too hot against Indiana.
no, he did not. And then on top of that, Rayola is going to Oregon as well. Yeah, that's at funds and fund wise and quarterback room wise. That's gonna be interesting situation. How they gonna work that out? But I don't think Rayola is gonna be starting over Moore. I think Moore is the better quarterback, in my opinion. Am I tripping, Coach?
No, I don't think you really are. I don't think so.
Okay, all right. But y'all, we just wanted to get on here and get an episode in, because we missed last Friday, man. We gonna do it. We was trying to do it last Friday, but something popped up with family. So I appreciate all the people that came in. The just to be nosy and listen to us babble, man. I appreciate y'all, man. Make sure you hit the like button, share, subscribe. Appreciate all y'all, man. Uh, Coach, let everybody know where they can meet you, see you.
You can catch me at Coach67SportsTV on all social media platforms. However, I'm primarily here on YouTube. Tomorrow, I'm not doing a live stream, but our beginning topic in terms of talking about who the most loyal fan base and the whole back and forth with the JSU fans. I got a long form video that's dropping tomorrow morning. I'll probably say about 6 o'clock. So y'all come through and come check that out. But y'all have a blessed and phenomenal weekend. Stay warm. Looks like here in South Louisiana we're gonna have some extreme cold weather. So y'all stay warm and stay safe. Uh, Shout out to the awesome and amazing LDBC, and peace and blessing to the family, you dig?
Yes, sir. Shout out to the mighty LDBC. And like I said, hit my like button, share, subscribe. Appreciate y'all trying to get the 500. But this was another installment of HBCU Fanatics. Y'all be blessed. Enjoy your weekend.
Peace.